Welcome, everyone. And for those who are new or fairly new, we are currently working with the traditional loving kindness practice from our Drikung lineage, but it's something that has variations throughout all of Buddhism. So it's universal, and our founder left us with some nuances to consider or to assist us in developing a completely open heart. And I'm also referencing Pema Chodron's book, Go to the Places That Scare You, which is quite a beautiful and wonderful book in its guidance on how to completely open up unconditionally to the world and to all the beings of the world. So we will be practicing, and I will give you the very simple instructions, not to worry, but if you notice that I'm referencing things, you can always go to our YouTube channel to look at some of the earlier talks that go into depth on the beginning stages of this practice. So today is a very easy day to practice. You may think that that's odd, but those times in our lives or in the world when there's a crisis, that's when all of our work as practitioners to familiarize ourselves and to take refuge in practice becomes our foundation for real. So it's like the day you get a cancer diagnosis, or your relationship falls apart, or someone you love dies, or you get hit by a car. Every emergency, when we have that foundation of practice, both is a reliance for us, a refuge for us, and a wake-up call that reminds us of impermanence and the imperative of using our life to its fullest capacity to reach the fruition of unconditional love. The first war that I remember as a committed practitioner was the First Middle East War. And I remember how surreal that seemed. And now it feels so sadly familiar. Similarly with school shootings and all of those things. Yet, you know, in the midst of the crisis or the midst of the beginning, there's still that wake up, let's use our lives to practice. That first war in the Middle East was what inspired Venerable Pema's wonderful book, Practicing Peace in Times of War. And we've also worked with that book. But the overnight news is great impetus in our loving kindness training to really emphasize the quality of equanimity that's an imperative when we're practicing loving kindness or any of the four immeasurables. We are working through the book, and we're looking at the chapter called Strength. And this is referencing a Lojong slogan, practice the 5 strengths. And the first of the 5 strengths is strong determination. In an emergency, we have a strong determination to wake up. You know, really simply, isn't it that? To wake up, to not use this moment to fall apart, but to wake up. And then the second of the 5 strengths is familiarization. I'm taking time with this practice, which, you know, I really can say is one of my heart practices. It's 2 months now, so that we are deeply familiarized with this practice. We know the steps, we know all the guidance to understand the steps, and we practice it enough that in a crisis, it's there for us. We don't have to remember it. We don't have to read a book. It's right there for us. So I pulled 2 quotes from Pema's book for today in terms of philosophy, and then a couple of thoughts in terms of her guidance. But let's start with the philosophy. Strong determination is our commitment to use our lives to dissolve the indifference, aggression, and grasping that separates us from one another. We develop wholehearted determination to use discomfort as an opportunity for awakening rather than trying to make it disappear. Okay, the key words: opportunity for awakening rather than trying to make it disappear. Then the second quote: we never get life to work out so that we are eliminating everything we fear and ending up with all the goodies. Therefore, the warrior bodhisattva cultivates equanimity, the vast mind that doesn't narrow reality into for and against, liking and disliking. Okay, in the midst of an emergency, we are cultivating equanimity so that we can enter, keep, fertilize the vast mind that doesn't narrow reality into for and against, liking and disliking. Now, this is an interesting instruction, and many times we resist this instruction, and there are areas in which we resist this instruction. But when we look at it and we look at really what is our goal, unconditionally open, as the first prayer was saying, wanting all beings to have enlightenment, especially those obstructors, enemies, etc., etc. That is an expression and reminder of equanimity, not narrowing reality into for and against, not allowing any bias to interrupt that open, expanding heart, like, dislike. So I'm going to review the steps of the practice and then a particular nuance to consider today. So we're sitting with our backs erect, our shoulders are rotated back, so it's opening our heart area. Our right hand is on our knee and our left hand upturned in our laps like the statues of the Buddha, and we're smiling. So the preparatory stage is to cultivate this open heart and really know what that feels like to you, whether it's a spontaneous memory or it's a memory of having received that unconditional love. And in terms of spontaneous, when your animal companion meets you at the door, so overjoyed to see you, there can be a natural opening of the heart, or seeing a little toddler. There are moments of opening when there are no defenses. Or we can do a body scan and see, is our body completely relaxed and open? It's a feeling you might have nature where you might feel very safe in totally opening and greeting nature with that openness. Once that is strong enough that you're confident in the feeling of loving kindness, then we start expanding it. And Lord Jigten Sumgön's instructions are just to spiral out from your heart every being that arises in your imagination, whether it's at your family dining room table, or you may, in the case today, expand to Washington and Venezuela and other parts of the world. In each case, you're looking at each and every being that arises in your imagination, and you're noticing when you start to block that natural radiating quality of love that's like an overflowing fountain just coming out of you. And you'll notice that this is where your shamatha practice comes in very, very handily, in the sense that right in that moment, it's very subtle to notice the block before it becomes hardened into rationalization and justification as to why this or that person is not deserving, or why that person should be rejected, why they're unacceptable, whatever edges. When conceptuality like that arises, it's blocking your attention from that abiding in bodhicitta and gently expanding that bodhicitta. So Lord Jigten Sumgön's advice is then you go back to steadying, replenishing, overflowing, and then beginning again. So being able to notice the waning or the block is essentially the practice. As those blocks get more and more subtle, our capacity to abide gets greater and greater, and our capacity to see the tiny nuances gets heightened. Now, the quality in Venerable Penama's advice that I'm inviting you to look at today is, first, she reminds us, yes, we want to catch that block. And in particular, we want to catch that block before we commit to it, before it becomes 100% believable. Like, for instance, if we were going through the aggressors who decided the war, there's that bodhicitta, there's a feeling of the heart stopping the natural overflow. And then there is that rationalization that makes us believe, well, that person, no, that person, no, that person, no. So we're catching those thoughts before. And we're just noticing, whoa, my heart is starting to close down in relation to this being who has Buddha nature just exactly the same as I do. That's what we're looking for. And then, as always, there's a sense of what you can do today is up to you. We give ourselves complete permission to say, I'm not ready for this, I have to start with a neutral person. Or I'm not ready for this, I have to start with someone very, very safe, someone I know and feel that is dear. That is fine, because we're still learning the practice, and over time, we'll be ready for more and more difficult things. But one way we can train ourselves to be ready, let's say, and this is another quote from her, reflect on how much pain is caused by grasping and aversion. So we can start to notice that there is a subtle pain that we experience when we grasp. There's a subtle pain when we are, are professing righteously our view, why this person should be rejected. And she invites us to really see that this samsaric vulnerability of grasping and attachment is mixed with pain. And once we start to see the pain therein that we experience, we have incentive to let go of it. And if we really investigate that pain, we see that pain that those people who are trapped in it are feeling. And that allows us to have compassion for them. I'm going to go back to this quote. Reflect on how much pain is caused by grasping and aversion, how much pain there is in our fear of losing happiness, how much pain there is in feeling that certain people are not worthy of our compassion or love. And it's a process that, as we explore, we can also hold the aspiration, another one of the 5 strengths, for the strength and courage to one day feel unlimited loving kindness for all beings without exception, including those we dislike and fear. So let's go into the practice itself. We are filling up with bodhicitta. And remember, this is something that it's recommended that we spend weeks on. But when you feel confident and strong and there's a sort of natural overflow and you allow your imagination without direction, let's say, to allow that overflow, we're looking for when does the strength wane? And at the root of that waning, what is the attachment or aversion? Looking at the conceptuality and the mixture of pain that goes with that conceptuality, allowing that to dissipate, letting go completely of the story, going back to giving rise to bodhicitta, that warm tenderheartedness, allowing it to overflow and start again. So let's work with this for at least 10 minutes. We can begin. Remember to smile. So as you're meditating, let's go back to the key things we're looking at, not narrowing our mind into for and against, liking and disliking, and noticing when we narrow our mind like that, essentially we're wasting time, that all of this conceptuality starts arising. Going back to filling up with loving kindness, that unconditional love that we can tap into, letting it replenish, letting our biases fall away. And if possible, notice the very subtle suffering attached when we fall into our biases, into the rationalization of like and dislike. Simply noticing, beginning again over and over, essentially for the rest of our life. We're becoming so familiar that whenever there's an emergency, you don't even have to pat your cheek. It's right there. I'll go right into bodhicitta practice. So let's go a little further, noticing as you go along. Okay, we'll dedicate this practice and close the online so we can go into discussion. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.